Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Repeat after me. If we're not free, nobody's free. If we're not free, nobody's free. If we're not free, nobody's free. In America, you cannot have a group of people, black people, going through what we're going through in this country and say that there's true freedom in this country. So if we're not free, nobody's free, and if black lives don't matter, then all lives can't matter. Black lives must matter for all lives to matter. I am so glad that Kalie invited me and Watami, because I came here 30 years ago from Boston and really appreciated Emancipation Day every August 1st. It was said that in the last couple of years, there was not an Emancipation Day, either at the park or near the Amtrak station or wherever it's been over the last 30 years. So I'm glad that Kalie has taken the lead in making sure that we have an Emancipation Day in Rhode Island. So let's give Kalie a round of applause with his organization. Thank you. Thank you. Also, I do know that we have Juneteenth, so why not have two celebrations in Rhode Island every year? Juneteenth and Emancipation Day. What's wrong with that? Let's do that. This is the beginning of renewing Emancipation Day, and Juneteenth is the beginning of something in Rhode Island, but certainly around the country we have Juneteenth. Now, I'm not going to go over the history of emancipation because Keith Stokes and Senator Metz do as good a job of doing that as anybody in the state. So I'm not going to try to add anything to that. But I will add that the NAACP has been in Providence, Rhode Island for 107 years. We started here in 1913, we just didn't get here. And we have in the country 2,200 chapters over 37 states. So we are the oldest and largest civil rights organization in America. And names like Martin Luther King, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall, the one thing they have in common other than the fact that they are black is that they are all life members of the NAACP. Now, people mention Rosa Parks. In 1955, wouldn't give up a seat in front of the bus. Well, did you know that Rosa Parks was the branch secretary of the Montgomery branch of the NAACP, and that is how that started. Rosa Parks, let's hear from Rosa Parks, our branch secretary of the NAACP Montgomery branch. And our attorney, former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, in 1954, argued before the Supreme Court and won the landmark decision of Brown versus Board of Education, desegregating the schools, at least in theory, because we all know that they've been resegregated. But at least at the time, segregation of the schools was thought to be important enough, and our lawyer, Thurgood Marshall, did that. So let's hear from Thurgood Marshall as well, our attorney. Brown versus Board of Education. I see Cliff Montero everywhere I go. He's in Florida now, but he makes sure that there are certain people like Rosa Parks and Thurgood Marshall, NAACP champions that he says always mention. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure that people understand is that we're talking about African diaspora when we say black, and that's why I wore my Cape Verdean mask. This is the first Cape Verdean flag. People might think, well, what is this? Well, this is the first flag. The flag that we have now in Cape Verde is our second flag. So we had two flags, and we didn't have a revolution. Everything was peaceful in terms of the second flag. But this is the first flag, the independence flag of Amilcar Cabral, when we fought the Portuguese for our freedom, at least in terms of Cape Verde, Mozambique, Angola, and Guinea-Bissau. So when I say black, I'm talking about Cape Verde, I'm talking about black in the broadest context possible. So let's make sure that we all know that everybody's black, they are part of the African diaspora. Now, what's important to me right now? Well, I get calls from the people in Rhode Island each and every day, maybe 2 calls each and every day. People in distress in terms of discrimination, in terms of violence and what have you. I get calls, so we respond each and every day to those calls. I would say that's the majority of the NAACP work. It's pretty much behind the scenes. People want to keep it confidential. Nobody wants people to know their particular business. But that's what we do. We take calls each and every day. That's part of it. The other part of it is that we want to make sure people know that there's an election coming up. Did everybody know that there was an election coming up November 3rd? All right, are we going to vote November 3rd? Are we going to make any excuses of not voting on November 3rd? Okay, because November 3rd, to me, is a defining moment in American history. You know, I was around when Martin Luther King was alive. When he was assassinated, I was 16 years old in 1968. And that's what launched my civil rights career. I remember we walked out of school because a couple of brothers were wearing dashikis against the dress code, and they said, you can't wear that kind of militant, you know, clothing or wardrobe. And so we walked out in 1968, walked out of Boston Technical High School. And then as a freshman at Dartmouth College, this guy named William Shockley was given an address saying that black people were genetically inferior to white people. He was going to come to campus and do that. So at the age of 18, my freshman year, we showed him that he's not going to just come to anybody's campus and talk about black people being inferior to white people. And we clapped him down and made sure that that kind of rhetoric was not stand in 1969. So that's how I got started in this long journey of civil rights. And it was on the backs of the civil rights pioneers that some of the Senator Metz mentioned, and others here, like Mike Van Leesten and others, I don't want to name names because I'll leave out too many. But they are my mentors, and they're the ones that kept me going. And they're the ones that made me choose the community over corporate America way back when I graduated from school in 1973. So today, what's important in Rhode Island is not just voting, and we're going to have a voting education campaign, and that's going to be very much known. But there are some other things I want you to help us with. And I didn't say me or the NAACP, I said us, because it is us. If it isn't us, then you don't belong at the table. Because if you don't understand that fundamental truth, then there's an issue, okay? It's about us. So the one thing I want to know is that you're going to help in terms of making sure that everybody's counted on the census. Okay, the census is important because the federal dollars coming in. So can we at least make sure that everybody gets counted on the census? I'd be remiss if I didn't at least bring that up. The other thing is that we have a chance to have a black person on the Supreme Court for the first time in Rhode Island history. Black person on the Supreme Court. Should there be a black person on the Rhode Island Supreme Court? Shouldn't there be? Yeah. Are you going to help me and others to make that happen? Yeah. Well, let's make that happen. Okay, we have a chance to do that. We have a chance to have a black on the Superior Court. We have a chance to have our first Latino judge in Rhode Island history in the family court. So I want each and every one of you, that's right, clap, in the history. And we're working on it. And we're working on it each and every day with a lot of different people behind the scenes. But I want you to help me. We need the help. I'm asking you to help me make these things happen. We're working with other organizations in terms of legislation. We just heard that fair chance licensing just passed. Now that was something that was important to all of us, making sure people with a record can get a fair chance and get a license to be a barber or a pipe fitter. So that's going to happen here in Rhode Island. They're not going to be penalized the way they were because of the fact that they have a record, only because they have a record, nothing else. All right? But we also have source of income discrimination in Rhode Island. If you don't have the right kind of job, they can discriminate against you in housing. That doesn't make any sense. So if you have a Section 8 certificate or if you have Social Security, somebody can discriminate against you? No, we're going to fight that. That's called source of income discrimination. We want you to help us with that piece of legislation. Also, equal pay. Men and women for the same job, for the same experience, you get paid equally. Make sense? That makes sense. Also, early voting. We need to be a part of the movement that has early voting. Not everybody can vote on November 3rd because they're working 2 and 3 jobs. But we need people to vote. 46% of America voted early in 2016, and the sky didn't fall. So let's make sure that early voting happens in Rhode Island. Okay, let's make sure that happens. So we're here. We understand that police brutality is an issue, and we're working on it. I'm part of Senator Metz's commission, and I know Anastasia Williams, the representative, has a bill. Keep your eye on the prize in terms of the leaderboard bill, because we're going to change that bill. That is not working in our interest. It is probably the most pro-police officer bill in the United States, in the country. So we got to change that. All right, so work with us on terms of that, okay? That's coming up, and I know that in the past there's been police chiefs that have come and said, Jim, I have a bad officer, okay? Not that the system isn't bad, but I have a bad officer. That's two different conversations. Can you help us get rid of them? So I've been to those hearings. I've testified on behalf of departments, and I've been part of people getting fired from the Providence Police Department, Providence Fire Department. Been part of that. But it was too difficult. It took too long to do it. It took 6 months. It should have taken 6 hours. Okay? So help us with that. Help us with that. We have so many different issues. We have the largest gap between black and white in terms of median income in the country. We have the biggest gap in terms of home ownership in terms of black and white in the country. Providence Public Schools has been said to be the worst public school system in the country. So we have many, many issues and they're daunting. And we need help. So if you want to join the NAACP, that's fine. If you don't, join somebody that's doing something positive, that's fine. But I'm telling you, there's plenty to do. It's overwhelming. George Floyd's death is probably the most watched or known event since Martin Luther King died. So trust me, we are not in a moment, we are in a movement, okay? This is a movement, not a moment. I haven't felt like this since the 70s as a young person, working hard on different issues in Boston, my hometown. So let's not lose that. I'm re-energized, and I want you to be energized too. So please, let's remember the past, Emancipation and Juneteenth, and all that's great. And I'm a historian, I love it, I read everything. That's important, but never forget the present and the future, what we gotta do now. I've laid out a couple of things that you can plug into. There might have been some things that I didn't mention. That's fine, I can't think of everything off the top of my head, believe it or not. But what I'm saying is that be a part of something. I don't care if it's one thing, and follow it through to the end. And if you want to join me in terms of making sure there's a black Supreme Court, black justice on the Supreme Court, another one on the Superior Court, and another Latina in any court, first one, family court, then let's make that happen. Because we're working. We're working. I mean, a couple of years ago, this church in Providence, black church, said we want to go to Johnston to relocate our church in Johnston. And the town of Johnston said, no, we're not going to have that. And they called me and they said, Jim, we need your help. They don't want us in Johnston. Well, I'm here to tell you that after we got finished with Johnston, 6 months later, at the ribbon cutting in Johnston, with the mayor kissing me on the cheek, that's the power of unity in our community. Okay? That wasn't just a victory of the NAACP or the church. That was a victory of all of us. That when we get busy, it happens. It happens. So just like what any of you are doing, take a little bit of time out, and do something for somebody or some cause that's bigger than you. Do something for somebody that might not have as much as you. And God will thank you for it. And I want to thank you. Amen. Thank you.